and I would never stop replaying in my head. I was told that my daughter had been fatally shot in the back and that I needed to identify her body.
This is Kanivia Howard-Browley, a 25-year-old mother of a 4-year-old whose life was tragically cut short in the most shocking of ways. On September 8, 2024, a quiet suburban neighborhood in Wyoming, Michigan would become the backdrop for a murder that no one saw coming. What began as a simple dispute between Kanivia and her 48-year-old neighbor quickly spiraled out of control, unfolding in the most horrifying manner. By the afternoon, at approximately 12:40 p.m., Wyoming police received urgent reports of gunfire from the 3400 block of Bluebird Avenue. When officers arrived, they found Kanivia lying motionless on the ground, her body riddled with gunshot wounds. But what the police didn't expect to uncover was the chilling truth behind her death. A live video had captured the entire tragedy. The footage showed her neighbor, armed with a gun, chasing her through the street, firing as she desperately tried to flee. As investigators piece together the events of that fateful day, the question remains: how did a simple argument lead to such a brutal and senseless act of violence? But before that, let me take you back to how it all began. Our story takes us to Wyoming, Michigan, a serene suburban city nestled just outside Grand Rapids. Known for its tree-lined streets and charming residential neighborhoods, Wyoming is a place where families feel safe and the pace of life is slow. But behind the calm, an unimaginable tragedy would soon shatter this quiet community. At the center of this heartbreaking tale is 25-year-old Kanivia, a woman whose life and the lives of those who loved her was torn apart in an instant. Kanivia Joycelyn Howard-Browley was born in 1999 in Wyoming, Michigan. She grew up in a peaceful suburban setting, a city known for its quiet residential neighborhoods and tree-lined streets. Wyoming, a part of the greater Grand Rapids area, was a place where families thrived, children played outside, and the community felt tight. For Kanivia, this was home, a place where she dreamed of making a better life for herself and her child. Wyoming, Michigan was more than just a place to live. It was where she imagined building her future, a future full of hope and possibilities. As she grew, she was determined to turn her dreams into a reality. She wasn't just any mother, but a mother with big dreams. She worked tirelessly, both as a certified lash technician and as the proud owner of her own successful lash extension business, Brown Blinks & Co. In every aspect of her life, whether she was perfecting the latest lash techniques or connecting with clients, Kanivia's passion and dedication to her craft were unmatched. Her friends and family described her as a woman with a heart of gold, always going the extra mile to help others. She had an infectious smile that could brighten even the darkest of days, and a personality that made everyone feel like family. Kanivia's energy was contagious, and she quickly became known as someone who could light up a room just by walking in. She was deeply committed to her family, and nothing meant more to her than the well-being of her son. Kanivia's devotion to her child was clear to everyone who knew her. She was the definition of a loving and protective mother, always putting her son's needs above her own. She worked around the clock to create a better future for the two of them, juggling the demands of running her own business with the responsibilities of motherhood. Even as she balanced the challenges of being a small business owner, she never lost sight of her dreams. Dreams of providing a life full of opportunities, adventure, and security for her child. Kanivia's ambitions extended beyond her work. She wanted to build a legacy. She envisioned a future where her son would grow up proud of his hard-working mother, one who never gave up on her dreams. Sadly, Kanivia would never get to see those dreams realized. Despite her fierce determination and resilience, her life would be tragically cut short.
The future she had worked so hard to create for herself and her son came to an abrupt and heartbreaking end, leaving family and friends in utter disbelief. On the afternoon of September 8, 2024, a tragic incident unfolded in the quiet residential neighborhood of Bluebird Avenue SW in Wyoming, Michigan. What began as a seemingly disagreement soon turned into a nightmare that would leave the community in shock and heartbreak. At approximately 12:40 p.m., a domestic dispute erupted between Kanivia and 48-year-old Anthony Lamar Buxton, a man with a history of volatile temper. Witnesses reported hearing the two engaged in a heated argument, their voices escalating as the confrontation turned physical. Kanivia, who had been living in the area for several years and was known as a kind, hardworking individual, tried to flee the scene to avoid further escalation. As Kanivia attempted to escape, Anthony chased her down the street, and in an act of pure rage, he pulled out a firearm and began shooting. The sound of gunfire echoed through the normally peaceful neighborhood as Anthony fired multiple shots at Kanivia. Despite her desperate attempts to run, Kanivia was struck with a fatal bullet, collapsing in the middle of the street.
Surveillance footage from a nearby home caught the chilling moment. The video shows Anthony relentlessly pursuing Kanivia as she fled for her life. He fired 3 shots at her, with one of the bullets hitting her in the back. In broad daylight, this public execution shocked onlookers who could do nothing but watch in horror from their windows. Minutes later, Wyoming police received several reports of gunfire coming from the 3400 block of Bluebird Avenue. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Kanivia lying on the ground, severely injured with multiple gunshot wounds. Paramedics immediately rushed her to the hospital, but tragically, she succumbed to her injuries shortly after arrival. The community was left in disbelief as news of the senseless murder spread quickly. As police began their investigation, Kanivia's friend, who had been nearby, arrived at the scene, finding Kanivia lying on the ground, gravely injured. But this was only the beginning. When the friend confronted Anthony, who had not yet fled the scene, in a terrifying turn of events, Anthony pointed the gun at the friend, threatening to shoot her as well. It was a moment of pure desperation as Kanivia's friend managed to escape without injury, running to safety. In the aftermath of the shooting, Anthony retreated to his garage, where he hid the weapon in a bucket, trying to dispose of any evidence of his crime. But witnesses had already seen the full extent of the violence. Residents in the neighborhood were shaken by the incident. Many knew Kanivia as a devoted mother who had worked hard to provide for her children. Friends and family members described her as warm-hearted, always ready to lend a hand to those in need. The tragedy not only devastated her family, but also left the entire community questioning how something so horrific could happen in such a close-knit area. Witnesses later reported that the argument between Kanivia and Anthony had been brewing for days, with tension building over unresolved issues. But no one could have predicted it would escalate to such a violent outcome. What had started as a simple argument in a domestic setting tragically spiraled out of control, turning into one of the most shocking acts of violence the neighborhood had ever seen. The shooting left the community of Wyoming, Michigan in shock. This quiet, family-oriented neighborhood, typically filled with children playing and neighbors greeting one another, was now the scene of an unthinkable tragedy. In the aftermath of the shooting, Wyoming police immediately launched a comprehensive investigation. They started by collecting evidence from the scene, including eyewitness testimony and nearby surveillance footage. The footage was crucial. It clearly showed Anthony chasing Kanivia into the street and firing the fatal shots. It was a damning piece of evidence that would become a cornerstone of the case against him. As detectives pieced together the details of the incident, they uncovered Anthony had a troubling history. In fact, this was not the first time Anthony had used violence. Further investigation revealed that Anthony had a lengthy criminal record, including a conviction for armed robbery in 1994. Despite his felony conviction, he had been able to legally acquire and possess a firearm. Experts in law enforcement emphasized the dangers of allowing individuals with violent histories to have access to weapons, and Kanivia's death was a tragic example of why stronger measures are needed to prevent such violence. Following the confrontation with Kanivia's friend, Anthony had retreated to his garage, where he hid the firearm used in the shooting in a dark-colored bucket. The gun, along with unspent rounds matching the weapon used in the shooting, was later recovered by investigators. This discovery, combined with the surveillance footage and witness testimony, left little doubt about Anthony's involvement in the murder. Anthony was arrested at the scene and taken into custody. He was charged with multiple offenses, including open murder, felonious assault for threatening Kanivia's friend, and 3 weapons-related charges. As a convicted felon, Anthony was not legally allowed to possess a firearm, and this charge alone carried a potential 5-year sentence. However, the gravity of the murder charge meant that he was facing much more severe consequences. The possibility of a life sentence loomed over him as prosecutors built their case. On September 10, 2024, just 2 days after the murder, Anthony was arraigned in Wyoming District Court. The court denied him bond, and he was held in Kent County Jail while awaiting further legal proceedings.
A man accused of shooting a 25-year-old woman in Wyoming over the weekend is now charged. Police responded to a home on Bluebird Avenue Southwest for the report of a shooting around 12:40 in the afternoon Sunday. When they arrived, officers said they found 25-year-old Kanivia Howard-Browley with multiple wounds. She later died at the hospital. Witnesses told police the two were arguing and that Buxton chased Howard-Browley into the street and shot her 3 times.
The next step in the legal process was a probable cause conference scheduled for September 18, 2024. During this hearing, the court would review the evidence against Anthony and determine whether there was enough to proceed with a trial. Given the strength of the evidence, including video footage, witness testimony, and the recovery of the murder weapon, a conviction appeared highly likely.
The murder of Kanivia Howard-Browley sent aftershocks through the Wyoming community. Known for its peaceful atmosphere, the city was left reeling after such a violent act occurred in broad daylight. Kanivia was remembered by her friends, family, and clients from her lash business as a kind, ambitious woman with an infectious smile and a determination to succeed. Those who knew her best shared stories of how hard she worked to provide a better life for herself and her son. She was a rising entrepreneur, a talented lash technician who ran her own business, Brown Blinks. Her customers and clients, along with those who had worked with her, described her as a vibrant and driven young woman who had an infectious smile and a spirit that could brighten anyone's day. Kanivia's tragic death was a reminder of how quickly violence could destroy a life, especially when it is fueled by toxic relationships and uncontrolled anger. The community rallied around Kanivia's family as they tried to make sense of the loss. The grief was overwhelming, but the support from loved ones and neighbors helped them cope. Kanivia's family members were devastated by the senseless violence that took their beloved daughter and sister away from them. Kanivia's family made it clear that they would be pursuing justice for her. As the investigation progressed, they were determined to ensure that Anthony Lamar Buxton would be held accountable for his actions. The thought of a violent felon being able to take Kanivia's life with a weapon that he should not have had access to left them reeling. Their advocacy for better gun control and stricter enforcement of laws against convicted felons possessing firearms became a driving force behind their push for justice. In the weeks following Kanivia's death, the community came together to honor her memory. Friends, family, and local business owners organized memorials, fundraisers, and gatherings to support Kanivia's family. The love and warmth that Kanivia had given to those around her were returned in full force, as her legacy lived on through the memories of those who knew her best. As the investigation into Kanivia's murder unfolded, it became clear that this was a tragedy that never should have happened. A promising young woman with a bright future, a successful business, and a deep love for her son was taken from the world far too soon. The community of Wyoming, Michigan was left grappling with the senseless violence that had shattered their peaceful neighborhood. With Anthony Lamar Buxton facing multiple charges including open murder, the case continues to unfold and the family of Kanivia Howard-Browley remains determined to seek justice for her untimely death.
Kanivia's funeral was held in the days following the shooting, with a large gathering of family, friends, and community members who came together to pay their respects. The ceremony was filled with tears, but also moments of joy, as people shared stories of Kanivia's warmth, her dedication to her work, and her boundless love for her son. As her loved ones said their goodbyes, they also celebrated the life that Kanivia had led. Though she was taken too soon, her impact on the lives she touched was immeasurable. Her son would grow up knowing how deeply his mother loved him and how hard she worked to create a better life for both of them. During the funeral, Kanivia's family members expressed their desire for justice and their hope that her death would not be in vain. They spoke of the importance of addressing domestic violence and of advocating for stronger laws to prevent situations like Kanivia's from happening in the future. Her family promised to continue fighting for change and to work toward creating a safer world for others, particularly for those who had suffered in silence like Kanivia had. The tragic loss also served as a stark reminder of the dangers of domestic violence and the impact it can have on everyone involved, especially innocent children. What do you think about it? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.